And we started getting all of these projects into our GIS, and that was a real challenge because of the quality of the maps, the lack of digital tax parcel data at the time. So for 25 years now, almost since I started here in '99, I've been going through these files, primarily interested in the mapping aspect, but along the way, getting very familiar with some of the problems, some of the issues, the rules and regs. And, ultimately, one of my managers said, you've learned a lot about this. Why don't you just take it on? And so if you work in government, you know how that goes. But it really is interesting stuff. I just want to talk about the Land and Water Conservation Fund, what it is, what it means for you, and then show you some tools to a map primarily to look at projects in your community. And then we'll also take a quick look at a smartphone app for doing park inspections. Land and Water Conservation Fund, established in 1964 with a 25-year sunset. It was reauthorized for another 25 years. And then with the Great American Outdoors Act of 2020, it was permanently reauthorized. Funding for the program comes from offshore oil and gas royalties, with additional funding from something called GOMESA, which I believe stands for the Gulf of Mexico Energy Security Act. And so the money comes in. Some of this goes to the federal government, the Forest Service and the Park Service for some of their programs on federal lands, and some of it comes to the states. The National Park Service sets the rules, but it's up to the state to administer the program. And then we have our contacts at NPS that help us out with any questions that we don't quite know how to answer. Program was primarily for acquisition, development, rehabilitation of outdoor recreation facilities. So no indoor pools or hockey rinks or anything like that.
Paul, before you go on, I just want to regroup for one quick moment. A bunch of people came in after we had just gotten started. So just a couple of housekeeping reminders that we've muted everyone. So feel free to talk in the background because we won't hear that. If you have questions, please put them in the chat. This is being recorded. And in addition to any questions or comments that you might put in the chat, I'll be posting some information. I've posted both Paul's and my names and contact information already in the chat. We'll provide some links and whatnot as we move forward. Again, this is targeted to municipal staff. And if there are others on the call who have questions, your first point of contact is your municipal staff, your planners or administrators, managers, that kind of a thing. I don't think I'll interrupt again on that. So hopefully we'll take it away. Sorry, Paul. Thank you.
That's okay. Thanks, Megan. It actually reminded me that there was a couple more things I wanted to say about this slide, and that is that one of these is today Rhode Island's received about $50 million over 400 grants, and this was everything from tot lots to state parks, major development of soccer fields, football fields. At the same time, Rhode Island recreation bond funds have gone to 541 projects, about $86 million in total. And I always like to point out our Rhode Island grants are an 80-20 match versus 50-50 for the Land and Water Conservation Fund. So, and I think we've also given out about $20 million in grants for open space acquisition. So over $100 million of state money. Just to look at land and water real quickly by the numbers, 309 state and local parks covering 19,700 acres. A lot of these locations have received multiple grants. In some cases, a single grant has gone to multiple parks, which is always interesting to try and figure out. As I said, about 50 million since 1965, and currently we're getting about 2.8 million a year. The original grant agreements are pretty sparse. I should have, it says here at the bottom, general provisions, December 1965. And those general provisions were attached to the second page of the grant agreement. But so much of this stuff, because it dates back to the 60s and 70s, I think just judging by our own files, things go missing. People forget. One of the issues with this program is that there is a restriction on the property. It has to remain in outdoor recreation use forever if you've taken the federal money. And if no one remembers that, there was nothing recorded in land evidence records. And so some of the stuff just gets lost. In addition to the grant agreement, you get a nice map showing you what the restricted area looks like. In this case, it's not entirely clear, but working through the property descriptions and looking at what's there, we're generally able to figure these things out. And I will add that as you're looking at these in your community, if you think the map is wrong, by all means, get a hold of me, paul.jordan@dem.ri.gov, or give me a call, and we can try and figure it out. So that's what the maps looked like then. Moving forward, we started out with a map like that. We've got tax parcel data for almost every community. I will say that tax parcel data isn't always necessarily accurate, right? It's not a survey. You'll see funny things happen, but we try to look at everything we can find and make sense of the boundary. And so going forward, this is what 6F maps look like for the Park Service, much clearer representation of what we're looking at. And again, if you look at something and you have a problem with it, let me know, we can figure it out. What this means for you. So here's a long-winded, don't read this, please. I will read to you the part in red. Any property so acquired and or developed shall not be wholly or partly converted to other than public outdoor recreation uses without the approval of NPS. So a lot of words there. This comes straight out of the State Assistance Manual, which is linked on our webpage. I'll show you that in a few minutes. Chapter 8 covers your post-completion responsibilities, your stewardship responsibilities for one of these properties. Having said this, conversions are not impossible, but they are difficult. And so we'll talk about that a little bit. Probably when we see these conversion applications, so someone comes in and says, you know what, we want to build a new school on this park, but we'll give you this other piece of land across the street. You still have to explain in the application, what other alternatives did you explore? Why were they rejected? Why is this conversion the only thing that's going to work in your community? And there are lots of other requirements there about the replacement value of the property, that it has to be equivalent utility for outdoor recreation. So, you can't replace a football field with 2 tot lots, even if the property had some, huge value attached to it on the tot lots, right? And, the appraisals worked out. So a lot of interesting questions to go through, and we can help you with all that. And we get help from the Park Services. We're looking at these. But these are kind of the things that you have to look at. The equivalent utility, the equivalent property value. It can't be an existing recreational facility. So if you've got another park in town that doesn't have an NPS restriction on it and you say, oh, I think I'll use that one as my swap parcel, it's not going to work, because the goal here is no net loss in outdoor recreational opportunities. So if you take something away and replace it with something that's already a park, you still lost something. So, and some of the more difficult parts of the conversion, the Yellow Book appraisals, NEPA, and NHPA Section 106 reviews. So it's a process, but if you have to do it, we can try to help you get there. Unapproved conversions. As I said, most of these projects are old. There was never a land record of this restriction, this boundary. Paperwork gets lost, an office gets moved and something gets lost, or it's in the basement. And just institutional memory. We all just forget about these things. And again, that land evidence piece, I think one of the things we're talking about now is trying to get people to record something, notice of a grant agreement attached to a particular property, so that 50 years from now, if someone says, hey, we want to sell this for economic development, there's something there in the land evidence record to say, oh, hold on a minute. Here we are at the summary, right? Most important thing, forever restricted to public outdoor recreation. Structures in these properties. You can have restrooms, you can have locker rooms even. you can't have something that is not outdoor rec related. So as I said, an indoor swimming pool, an indoor hockey rink, these aren't things that you can build on this land. You can't put your parks and recreation office building on the land without having to go ahead and restrict every single park that that office is involved with. So some tricky issues there. Inspections for compliance. We have not done a particularly good job with this at the state level. We lost some people a few years ago to retirements, early retirements. You know how difficult it is to bring another FTE in to do something. But this is something we're supposed to do every few years, every 3 or 5 years, just to go out and look and make sure that the park is accessible, that it's open, that it's clean, it's inviting. You know, there's nothing preventing people from accessing the park. Again, we want you to work with us when you see these issues. Don't panic. Megan and I always joke about this. We're here from the government and we're here to help. So the Land Water Conservation Manual, Chapter 8 is your post-completion and stewardship guide. There's a link there. That document is also linked on our website. So that's what our website looks like, DEM Planning and Development. I'm going to jump into kind of a live look at this. So let me get out of here. We'll close out the PowerPoint for a second, and we will look at our website, dem.ri.gov. Planning and Development is under the Natural Resources Bureau. So again, dem.ri.gov, Natural Resources, Planning and Development. Scroll down the page there and go to our Land and Water Conservation Fund.
And Paul, I have put a link to this in the chat.
Perfect. So just a basic information about the program, a link to the latest iteration of the manual, which is October 2023. This land and water restriction is from the Code of Federal Regulations, 36 CFR 39. You can have a look at that. The stewardship booklet is actually a pretty good read. There's some good information there. A little less complicated. There's another link to the manual. And
I'll note there's actually a typo. It's 36 Code of Federal Regulation Part 5959. We'll get that typo corrected as we update the page.
Thank you. I wondered about that as I was reading. I'm like, that doesn't seem right. Notice of grant record template. I think we've had at least one city file a couple of these for us. And so that's been helpful. So there's something there if you decide you want to do something with your land evidence records. The LWCF project map, you just click the link. I already have it open. So we'll just go here. So if we look at, where's my legend? Where's my legend? There it is. So approved conversions, conversion substitution, right? You've got to replace the land. Things where there's something pending, places where nothing's changed, the boundary's intact, and then unapproved conversions. And so for you to look at these for your municipalities, one of the first things you can do, obviously you can zoom into the map if you want, but you can filter over here. This is really easy. If I say sponsor is, and I saw my friend Mike on the call, so I'm going to go to Narragansett and then just turn that on. And you see that everything else disappeared except for the orange dots, which are actually places where we've done inspections. And I can turn those off too, because we don't really need them at the moment. So here we are in Narragansett, and I can click on any one of these. Dominic Cristofaro Memorial Park, 1981. Don't worry about the scale. And if we go to the more info, we can get the grant agreement. So here's a slightly better map. Even though it's based on tax assessor's map, it's got some distances and whatnot. And so it's pretty easy to take that into GIS, overlay it, and come up with the boundary that we have here. Let me just get out of there. And we can look at aerial photos. So pretty simple to use, not complicated. If I just turn that off, zoom
I'll
back
note
out.
that Paul was able to bring up the agreement that was related to that file. Again, if you're using things and find that there's an error, please let us know. It certainly happens on occasion. Also, sometimes there's more than one agreement that relates to a project or to a land
Yes.
and water site. And we haven't yet figured out how to make sort of that volume of information available at this scale. So we're kind of working on that with our IT folks and just what's going to make sense. But this is a great way to open the door to the information and at least give you some tools to start a conversation with us.
Yeah, I think you will see on some of these, of course, I'll never find one that has it. See, other 6F, none found. What I'm trying to do is at least get, if there's another project ID in there, to get it linked. Not necessarily linked, but at least to know that it's there. But yeah, we're still trying to figure some of this out.
And in Rhode Island, all file names, all file IDs for the land and water program start with the numbers 44 dash, and then usually a couple of zeros. So you saw that in the dialog boxes that came up on the sites Paul clicked on. That kind of information, 44-00278, is also super helpful if you're going to be reaching out for a conversation with us. It tells us where to find a file.
Yep. Any questions so far about this, Megan?
Paul, there are no questions that have been put in the chat or comments, so it's a great reminder. Thank you that the chat button is available, and I think it's a fairly small group. So, feel free to ask your questions. And again, for many of the folks on this call and others, we will be reaching out as well after this program, in the next few weeks to touch base and make sure there are no questions or identify any projects that we need to work on together.
Right. Okay. So moving on from that, that's the map. Again, if you have any questions about this, if you have problems using it, email me, call me. We have new phone numbers, and I can never remember on it. It's 537-4497, 537-4497. And I think those will be somewhere in the presentation at the end. So I also mentioned inspections. We have a tool. These are all places that have been inspected. Some of these things I need to remove from this pop-up because you don't need them, like begin repeat count. But these are the sorts of questions that we need to answer about a particular park. For almost every facility in the state, including a number of state facilities, we need to get to work on posting the Land and Water Conservation Fund sign. And I think I was supposed to be looking at the price of some signage to see if it was something that we could do. If not, we can get you the graphics, and it's something maybe that your public works folks can do, but we're still looking at that. So we answer some questions, we take some pictures, and I'll show you how all that works. So this is the inspection app. This works on cell phones. Cell phones all have GPS now. You can see right here, it says cannot find your location because I'm doing this in a browser, which is the other option. You could sit in your office. You could go out and take some notes on a piece of paper and take some photos and come back in the office and do this. But Megan and I have both used this on our phones, iPads, very easy to use. So time and date of inspection are filled in for you automatically. We'll get rid of that. We can pop this map out even bigger if we want. We can zoom in, pan around, decide, okay, we want to do Lincoln Woods State Park. Drops a point there. I drop out of that. LWCF project number and name. I have not found a more elegant way to do this yet, so I apologize that you have to have this long pick list where you have to scroll through, but it's alphabetical, so it's not too terrible.
So keep in mind it's alphabetical based on the project name that was established in that file, which goes back 50 years, some of
Right.
them. So look at that file name and the, I'm sorry, that file number and the name that's associated with it. Makes it a heck of a lot easier. When I did inspections late last summer, that was my trip hazard. So I found it a lot easier to do a little bit of prep work before I went out, just to make sure that we are still using the same name today that we used back then. Oftentimes we rename a field or a park. So just double check ourselves.
Right. So we'll just say Lincoln Woods Park, we're going to do an inspection. If the park has another name, if you call it something else, and that is often the case, and I think I've noticed over the years that local parks tend to change name a lot, or pieces of the park get memorialized. So it's sometimes a bit of a challenge, but you do have other LWCF project name, if you know it, local park name, inspector, just your last name. And then just some simple questions. Does it look like a portion of the property has been converted? Yes or no? Has somebody built something? Is a neighbor encroaching? Is there something that doesn't look right? And intended use, is it being used for what it was intended? Again, appearance. Are there any changes that we need to know about? ADA access, upkeep and repair. Poor workmanship, use of inferior materials is really a question that's more related to immediate post-development. If you get a grant and 40 years from now, you don't really want to say, well, gee, the benches are broken down, so they must not have been built correctly, right? So are they obsolete? And we do have a couple of facilities that communities have decided they don't really want a ball field there anymore. They're just going to kind of let the land revert, maybe have a walking trail through it. And I think we have to file some paperwork for that sort of thing on a change of use, but it's not complicated. Vandalism, health and safety, is there staffing? Discrimination, it's one of those required questions. I don't know what you would come up with for evidence of discrimination. Fees and charges. I think there's, note here, non-resident fees can't be more than twice what a resident pays under the federal regs. So if you've got a land and water conservation funded park, you can't charge more than twice what residents pay. There's the question about the signage. So this is the good part, park photos. You can take up to 5 photos, or you can just go ahead and grab an image from somewhere on your hard drive. We'll say that because I don't know what those other ones are. So there's a map, right? I just added that to the inspection. So any compliance issues noted? Yes or no? Again, because of the signage, the question is answered almost always yes. And then, what issues did you find at the park? Possible encroachment, possible conversion, signs not posted, whatever seems right. And, if we could get some of you to do this as your guys are out in the parks, it would be a huge help. We're still required to do some auditing, just to go out and look at the results. But we need to start getting these done. So it's pretty simple. If this is something that you think you want to do in your community, I will be happy to come down, spend a couple of hours with you, with staff, just to, we can take a walk, go out and look at a park, do an inspection, make sure everybody's comfortable with it. It's pretty easy to use. So same as the map. If you have questions, please call me. So that's that. Any questions so far, Megan?
Hi, Paul. Yes, there is a question about the process for going through a conversion request.
Okay.
It's a pretty complex process, and I think the first step is to reach out to me or Paul, or me and Paul. I see we've got our old phone numbers on this slide. As Paul said, we just got new phone numbers, so I'll put those in the chat as well. The manual that you've got a couple of links to goes through in detail. This isn't a 3-step process. It's very complex, and a lot of it, a lot of the exact process sort of depends on the nuances of what you're proposing and how you're proposing it. So I know that one community is asking, certainly reach out to us, or we can reach out to you too to get into the weeds on that.
Yeah, and I would add, this is really, really important. If you think you have a conversion, don't start doing something about it before you talk to us. And the reason I say that is there was a community that knew they needed to do a conversion, authorized some money at their annual town meeting, went out and bought a piece of property, and then came back and said, hey, we're ready to do a conversion. And the answer from the Park Service at the time was, well, you own it now and you've made it clear that you're going to use it for recreation, so it's no longer eligible. You got to be really careful. Land that you own already is eligible as a substitution if you're going to do a conversion, provided that it's not already in recreational use. I said that earlier. There's that no net loss idea at work. But you really want to talk to us first. Don't go out and start doing appraisals. Don't enter into purchase and sales agreements with anybody. Talk to us. Because really the first step is to get the Park Service to look at your replacement property and say, yeah, that looks like it should work, provided all the other questions can be answered satisfactorily, like the appraisal value, the recreational value, that sort of thing. So start early, and believe me, we will be more than happy to hear from you earlier rather than later. So bother us is the operative word of the day. Anything else, Megan?
No other questions in the chat. Again, if you have some questions in the chat, we're right about at the time that we were figuring, but happy to entertain any other questions. We will follow up with you, Tom, on your question. Anything else for the chat? Again, the chat button is at the top of the screen, at least on my Teams, kind of in the center of the screen. No other questions.
No raised hands, nothing? Okay.
So once again, we have been recording this. We will make it available on the website. We'll update the web page so it doesn't have the 2022 materials. Let me turn my camera back on. We'll try to fix those typos pretty soon, but we got you information in the chat. There's some great resources on DEM's webpage. And again, a lot of these same concepts apply to sites that got state funded outdoor recreation grants, right? They're permanent restrictions for outdoor recreation, publicly available, no discrimination. Can't charge $100 to an out-of-town resident if you only charge a resident $2, that kind of a thing. These are public funded projects, so the investment is made and it's expected to be publicly available and forever. If you've got a conversion that you're aware of, it probably predated you, right? It predated most of us here. We're not interested in oh, there's a word missing. We're not interested in making anybody feel bad. We want to help everybody find a path to success and to get into compliance with all of our regulations so that we're in better standing for grant proposals moving forward at the state or federal level, and so that we don't have a violation hanging over our heads for other things. I see Paul.
Yeah, I just wanted to. Yeah, so there were a couple of questions here. Jane is asking if DEM will provide a format for recording and land evidence records. And yes, there is on our website. Let me just share my screen again real quickly and go back to our website. Are you guys seeing this or not?
No.
No. Okay, let me try it again.
So
share.
Remember, we did provide a link to our website, and on that page for the Land and Water Program, there is a link to a notice of grant agreement. And I think that's what Paul's probably trying to show.
Right. And then there's a question from Tom Kravitz.
That's the one we were already discussing.
Yeah, I just think what I want to say about that is, you know, it's sort of a couple of steps in the process of getting the conversion app moving. You know, once we sort of get a green light to do appraisals, I think you really want to wait for the appraisals to come back and see if you've got the land value before you start spending a lot of time on 106 review, a NEPA review, you know, that sort of thing. Those things can get complicated. I think you want to know sort of ahead of time before you step into that you've actually got the land value.
So for those who may not have that broader picture, Paul is addressing one step of a conversion process. It's not the first step. So always, 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 if you have a conversion that was not approved and you want to figure out how to resolve it, first step is to reach out to us. If you have a vision for something that would result in a conversion, the first step is to reach out to us. I know we're from the government, but we really are here to help. We want to figure out where you're going and how best to get there. Again, we're all looking for a path to yes. We'll need you to help us identify that if it's in your community, but we're all looking for that way to be successful, either to resolve a longstanding issue or to address a conversion that's upcoming. Looks like Paul is typing something in the chat. I don't know if that's a
Nope, I'm not.
okay. Teams lies, tells me you're typing. Uh, so I don't see any other questions. We are just past 9 o'clock. I hope this was helpful. And again, municipal officials, please reach out to us if you have some questions. If you're not a municipal official and you have some questions, please reach out to the municipal officials in that community. Paul and I will be reaching out to folks. We can't say it often enough. Please reach out to us with any questions or with any proposals, scuttlebutt. Maybe the town council is talking about XYZ and you kind of know that there's a hitching spot there. We can help you navigate that or raise a flag so that there's better awareness. Whatever we can do to help, that's why we're here.
And before we go, I would just say, Mr. Crosby, would you give me a call, please? Yeah, you're muted, but just give me a call after the meeting. Thanks.
All righty. Well, thank you all. Hey, I hear it's supposed to be like 45 degrees today, so grab a set of plans and get out for a field inspection if you can.
Thanks, Megan.
Thank you all. Bye.